I honestly have to give a whole lot of credit to the United States Air Force. They are a very training-centric organization in general. So some of the stuff just came from them focusing on having the proper tools in place. There is a common thing in the military that as a leader, you're required to organize, train, and equip. Get the right people in the right places with the right tools to do the right job.
Welcome to Cybersecurity Heroes, an Iron Scales podcast about you, the heroes of cybersecurity. You're about to hear and learn practical and experiential knowledge in our conversations with security leaders and practitioners and other influential InfoSec stars so we can become more cyber resilient and safer together. Cybersecurity Heroes is brought to you by Iron Scales, the most powerfully simple email security platform. And I'm your host, Brendan Rudd. And now, let's get into the show. Hey Joshua, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on Cybersecurity Heroes. Before we dive in, I'd love to share or hear a bit about your background, what you've been up to, and what you're working on these days.
Sure. I've been working in IT or cyber for nearly 25 years now. I did my first 20 years in the Air Force doing everything from end user support, servers, routing, evaluations, pen testing, all the way up into government risk and compliance before I left the Air Force. For the last 3 years, I've been doing government contracting in the IT and cyber sectors, particularly in the federal, state, local, territorial, tribal markets, as well as some commercial, specializing in cloud and cloud security stacks. I have multiple degrees, about 50 plus certifications. Currently, I do SOC for state, territorial, tribal, local governments, as well as a handful of customers that are corporate in the civilian sector space.
I guess that means you're hiring constantly or enough. So do you have a hiring philosophy? And if so, I'd love for you to share your insights as we try to find solutions to the cyber skills, talent, and shortage that we have. I imagine a lot of those root causes starts from the top down.
Yeah, absolutely. With my team, we have a kind of a philosophy that we prefer referrals. So if you know somebody who's doing great things wherever they are, referring those folks to fill our open positions is always the best because you're dealing with an unknown quantity. You know what their performance is going to be like, and that kind of helps ease transition in. However, ultimately, quality is the key factor that we look for. It's about finding the right person for the position. We have job descriptions, essentially wish lists trying to find a unicorn. It's understanding what our minimum requirements are, what our must-haves versus our really what we like. And we kind of use some tools in our toolbox to help make that readily apparent. Obviously, this typical resume recruiter process. We also use Spark Hire to help us filter out some noise from the applications and the folks and kind of figure out from there what's the mix of things that we want to see from a candidate.
Would you mind diving a little bit deeper into Spark Hire, what that framework is all about?
Sure. Spark Hire is a great tool to do asynchronous interviews. We provide a list of 10 questions of varying technical degrees, as well as some social interaction type questions that the candidate answers. They record themselves answering, so we get to see a bit of their personality, get to match how close their technical skills in answering is compared to the resume to separate paper tigers from people who actually are true subject matter experts. And it allows us to get that first look at how they fit in our culture.
Coming from a military background, you must bring a lot to the table. So I'd love to know how your military background influences your team and your team building structure, for example.
Fortunately, I did cyber when I was in the military, so there is a lot of direct overlap in the cultures there. Obviously, the military comes with a very hierarchical nature, and that's helpful in some degrees for understanding when you're doing reporting and who should talk to who for what reason. But it also allows that out-of-the-box thinking a little bit to be explored because we're not adhering directly to a directly rigid military-type structure. what it does do is I've dealt with a lot of people over the last 20 years of my service where I could easily have had over 300 people that I have directly supervised over the last 20 years. So that gives me a lot of depth on my bench for understanding how people work and how to talk to them and get the best out of them and motivate them to be the best that they can be in their particular role.
And would you say there was anything that you had to unlearn that you didn't want to bring?
I'm tracking what you're asking. For me, the biggest thing was just understanding that the question why is going to be a lot more common. When you're in the military, you tell your subordinate, go do this thing. And typically they're just going to go do that thing because you have more stripes or more shiny things on your shirt than they do. On the commercial civilian side, you're going to occasionally hear, why are we doing this? Is there a better way to do this? And that was a mentality shift that I had to get used to because it was different.
In other words, you're promoting a more transparent or freedom of speech within your team. And I guess it's an important thing, at least in cybersecurity and in general in problem solving. There isn't necessarily one way to solve a problem. And I guess we should encourage different points of view.
Absolutely. It's not that's the right way because I'm the boss and I said so. It's here's what I think we should do. Oh, you have a better option. Talk to me, tell me about that. And we might use your solution over what, I brought to the table because it is indeed better. That's a open environment that allows that.
And can you walk us through your team? How did you build your team? Did it start from humble beginnings and grow over the years? And what was like your strategy?
We started very small. It's a fairly new organization within a much larger behemoth corporate. So we kind of have the best of both worlds of being a bit of a startup, but then still having all the big resources that a major Fortune 100 company you would expect to have. So it's a great blending of the two. So when we started really small, it's getting those really super technical skilled people that know how to do the job and then start bringing in people. And for me personally, you have to have that proper technical background, but it's all about having the right personality and the desire to do the job. I can take somebody who has never done SOC work at all, but if they have the right motivation and a strong technical background and want to do the job, I will hire them 100 times over somebody who's been a SOC analyst for the last 15 years and just doesn't want to do the expansion and continue to grow.
So are you saying by doing that, you're able to then start bringing in more junior roles to fit in and get mentored within that core group of more experienced professionals?
Oh, absolutely. We operate as a traditional tiered level SOC where you have multiple skill levels. And we kind of started off with those really skilled, very senior folks and brought those junior folks in right from the get-go. And the intent is that they grow with us and they move up through the tiered ranks. They're not going to have to sit here as a, tier 1 or a tier 2 forever. They're going to get here, they're going to grow, they're going to, prove that they know what they're doing, that they're ready for additional responsibility, and we'll promote them into a, tier 3 SOC analyst, or we'll move them over into the engineering side and let them do some of the back end stuff. And it's that growth mentality where you have those people who have those really strong technical skills growing and mentoring folks that are just coming into the field or just trust training into the field so that you're building the bench across the board and you're actually getting the best out of everyone involved.
Would you say that this traditional model, it's only, fitting for the enterprise? Because why are we in the situation we are today if every company can do this?
That's a complex question. And a lot of it comes down to folks really don't know what they're supposed to be hiring for or how to build teams. It's not a technical thing. It's a people thing. You have managers who want folks to hit the ground running right out of the gate. And that's just an unrealistic expectation. Unless I'm going directly from doing, job X for company Y into doing job X for company Y, there's always going to be at least a small training bubble that needs to happen, because just because I've done that tool for somebody else doesn't mean I know that tool for the way that you want the tool run. There's got to be a shift in the mentality of you have to invest in people and do training, because if you're not doing training, then people are going to go to where they can, where they're going to be able to grow. Some of it is people just putting out completely ridiculous job descriptions. When you look at that, you have folks that, and it's more particular to HR folks, where they see that the job is for a senior level person, and they have these time frames that they link to job titles, where it might be a junior is less than 3 years, and a mid's 5 years, and a senior's 10 years. And it's for some software application that's only been around for 5. But because they see that it's for a senior role, they'll put in the job description they want 10 years in a product that's only been around 5. And then people look at it and go, that's crazy. And it's really just because the HR folks aren't interfacing properly with the technical managers, the first line managers, to really understand what those job descriptions should be. If I'm using a SIM, it doesn't matter whether I'm using Splunk or Devo, Logarithm, McAfee. I want somebody that understands how to use a SIM. I can train you on how to use my SIM, but you understanding how SIMs work and what they do, that's what's really important. So I want 10 years of SIM experience. I don't want necessarily 10 years experience in this particular SIM.
So it really comes down to better training of the hiring managers and the HR, or that entire hiring group, because everyone needs to be on the same page. So I'm just curious about what you're doing that's different, and how does your hiring process work? Who is responsible for setting the requirements in the job description?
So we definitely take it as a collaborative effort as far as building out job descriptions. We'll let the first line supervisor, manager, as well as the technical SMEs, so normally in our case, it's our tier 3 or more senior folks, sit down and actually really write down what the legitimate task that person's going to have to do for the level of role that we want to hire. And then we bounce that against our HR folks, who are going to go ahead and say, these are our contractual obligations based off of what we have with our customer, because sometimes you do have degree requirements or certification requirements that are in your contract with your customer that says you will have this to be able to meet these criteria. So getting that balance between what HR needs versus what we technically need, and finding out the balance between those two. And then occasionally we'll have a more senior manager come in and review it and make sure that it passes their sanity check. So once that's done, we can look at the job description and go, this clearly articulates what the role is and what we need out of the job. And then we'll throw in all those unicorn things that everybody wants. I want you to have, or I need you to have Security Plus, but I really want you to have CISSP, and work it that way. But we boil it down to, these are the things I have to have. These are the things I'd like to have. And these things would be amazing to have.
Speaking of certifications, which ones do you recommend and why?
I kind of break that down into 2 categories. If you're going to work anything in IT security, cybersecurity, you really should have at least a baseline certification like CompTIA Security Plus, IC Squared, SSCP, or as a baseline. That's what's going to open the door for those federal and DoD type of opportunities where you have your minimum requirement 8570 certification to check the box. Then I think you probably should pursue a certification that is more targeted towards the role that you are currently involved in. For a entry-level SOC analyst, you're looking at maybe range first, SOC 1, SOC 2, or CompTIA, CYSA, or CASP, EC Council, CSA, or something that's really targeted to the thing that you're going to be doing. And then once you have that, figure out what your next role is and start targeting, your certification path based off of what roles you want to do or what requirements the jobs that you have require.
And being in the hiring market, can you give us some insights into the job market right now? What has changed? What's the current situation?
Really, the job market is wide open for things in cybersecurity. It's really just finding companies that are really to hire truly entry-level individuals. Unfortunately, you have a lot of companies that are focusing on return on investment right now and will hire somebody who is clearly a mid-level individual and put them in an entry-level job because they took the job. That's a short-term gain for, long-term loss. Obviously, I fully believe in investing in my people. I want to hire you in. I want to train you. I want to get you opportunities for expansion, education, and make it to where not only are you learning here, it's going to eventually make you more marketable someplace else. But I want to create the environment where you want to work for me because it's working for me. And you're going to get all the stuff that's, more than just the salary and the total compensation package. Really, it comes down to, it's a widely circulated conundrum that is talked in management of what happens if we train them and they leave? And then the right response to that is, what happens if we don't and they stay? I want somebody that's continually learning. I am a big advocate of the concept that if you want to work in cybersecurity and you only want to think about cybersecurity from 8 to 5 when you're at work, you're in the wrong field. This is a job that people who are really passionate or true professionals about it are constantly working at it. They're consuming, they're learning, they're doing all the things that are going to make them a better cybersecurity professional. And I can't expect you to do that all the time on your own time. I need to nurture that mentality by providing you training opportunities, by providing you the growth within the field. And by doing that, I work on having a really high retention rate because people want to stay. They still want to work for us. Even if they do get another opportunity that might pay more, it's all about the total compensation. Are they going to mentor you? Are they going to grow you? Is there, an educational component? Is the culture something that you want to work in? Money is one of those things that it's great, but it's not everything.
Cybersecurity Heroes is brought to you by IronScales, an AI-powered, self-learning email security platform that helps security professionals proactively prevent, detect, and remediate phishing attacks in a matter of seconds, not hours or days. And we have an exclusive offer for our podcast listeners. Discover dormant phishing threats in your organization's mailboxes. Get a free 90-day scan back with a detailed report. Integrate in seconds with 2 clicks via API to Microsoft Office 365 and see what your current email security is missing. Go to ironscales.com/free scan to learn more.
For companies wanting to try or build this program themselves, how much time should they expect for someone to be trained? And would you mind sharing if you have like a playbook or anything that can make this kind of program viable? Anything you can share in terms of how you've structured your internal training, or if you want to call it boot camp for newcomers?
Sure. In my current position, what we're doing is when we onboard somebody, we give them a full week to do nothing but training on our platform. We've purchased the vendor supplied training material. They go through all that. They get a vendor certification at the end. Then we step into using my military terms, crawl, walk, run, where it's over my shoulder. You watch me do the thing. Then I'm over your shoulder and watch you do the thing. And then we let you go and run and have full play on the environment. And that kind of stair steps folks in. And while our lead time going into getting an analyst from hire to on shift might be 3 weeks, when they hit the shift in 3 weeks, they're fully prepared to do the things that they need to do. And then we also build into our schedule 1 hour a day for them to do training of some kind. It doesn't matter for us really what it is, as long as you're doing something educational, as well as for us, we've designated Wednesday as our cross-training day, where we'll take folks from within the same team and have them teach each other things to help improve their job function. Because everybody has their little tips and tricks and secret sauce that they know how to do that is better than somebody else. And we want them to share that amongst themselves and can build that knowledge and create that team environment, even though in my case, all of our folks are virtual and remote.
Thanks. I really appreciate you sharing that stuff, because I think it's really important to share some tactical advice for folks wanting to at least think about it. Where did you learn to build this program? Did you figure it out yourselves? What was your resources and inspiration to build this kind of learning environment?
I honestly have to give a whole lot of credit to the United States Air Force. They are a very training-centric organization in general. So some of the stuff just came from them focusing on having the proper tools in place. There is a common thing in the military that as a leader, you're required to organize, train, and equip. Get the right people in the right places with the right tools to do the right job. I had a mentor of mine that added that mentor was that, fourth item that you needed to do. And if you're doing those four things, you're going to have a successful work center because you're giving them the right tools, you're getting the right people to do the right job, and you're empowering them to do the things they need to do. And you're providing them we call thrust and vector. Forward is good, but forward in the right direction is better.
I love that. So obviously you have a strong affinity to the military. What advice and, encouragement would you give to other military folks wanting to transition out of the military into cybersecurity? What can you say to them that will be like, hey, I can do this? And what can I add that other folks, won't have?
There is a plethora of programs that are available to service members who are getting ready to transition out, and even for service members who have left, to accelerate their field into cybersecurity. While they're in the service, there's a program called Cool Credentialing Opportunities Online that the services will pay for you to be certified. They'll pay for your class to go to learn it, and they'll pay for your certification. When you're in the last 6 months of your contract, you can apply for Dod Skill Bridge, which is a program that allows you to essentially leave active duty 6 months early and go work as an intern at an organization learning civilian skills. Absolutely love that program. It's great to get particularly folks who do military IT, to pull them into civilian IT and show them what the vast difference is between the two. There's also the Institute for Veterans and Military Families out of the University of Syracuse that will do certification training and paying for the certification itself. There's groups like VetSec that put on amazing networking events. They're getting ready to have a VetSec Con, I believe in October. That is kind of all those tools are out there. You just have to reach out, grab them, and grab hold and use what's available to you.
And can you speak to some more of the advantages military personnel are bringing with them into the cybersecurity workforce?
For me, one of the biggest advantages of bringing military folks over is that they are used to working in teams. One of the drawbacks I've seen in the civilian sector is the idea of gatekeeping information and knowledge. I don't want to share this information because if I share that, then I can be fired. And really what's happening is it's not that you can be fired. It's now I can't promote you. Because if you're the only one that knows this, I can't move you to something bigger, better, and more suited to your talents because you've kept that information. Military folks don't have that, internal bias. It was trained out of you that you have to know the person above you's job and know the person below you's job as just a matter of being in the military. And that's a very great skill to have because they're able to, freely share information both up and down, and they want to learn all the information. So that allows them to do a lot of the transitions and get promoted faster because they're willing to do the things to get promoted and let go of information so they can.
Would you say that, again, military personnel are the least egotistical out of the IT and cybersecurity segments? Because we hear a lot about elitism, egos getting in the way. And like you mentioned earlier, not collaborating. I've heard also stories of how there can be friction between IT and cyber teams.
I wouldn't necessarily say that all military are not egotistical because there's obviously always the exceptions that prove the rule. But I would say that the military veterans are far more team-oriented and are going to work better to make sure that everyone is pulled along versus necessarily it's all about me and what can be done for making me look better. And that definitely helps in a IT environment, especially as you start growing into larger IT environments. It's all about teamwork because no one person can do everything.
Definitely. Do you have any tips that you would give folks during the interview?
Yeah, absolutely. Tie your skills to the job. Highlight all the things that you've done that go back directly to that job description. You should know the job description inside and out because that's what I'm interviewing you for. You should be able to highlight things on your resume that directly tie to that. Give me your elevator pitch. Tell me what's awesome about you and that what makes you perfect for this role. Know about my company. Know what we're doing. Be able to articulate how you want to fit into that and how that you fit in better than somebody else. Technical skills only take you so far. A lot of what we hire on is based off of having a baseline technical skill and then having the right personality to match that. I have absolutely hired folks that were both on paper and based off the interview, technically less proficient, but were a better fit personality-wise for our team.
Do you do any kind of practical testing, or is it more about trying to find some sort of aptitude and general fit?
We do panel interviews. Once we select our top candidates, we'll do a panel interview that generally has between 2 to 3 subject matter experts, whoever the hiring manager is, and then typically a senior manager. And we will go through asking very technical questions, judging their experience with the tool sets, validating the knowledge that resume shows that they have. But we'll also do soft skills. How do you handle working in a remote environment? What's your experience working in teams? What's your experience doing documentation? How do you communicate this technical thing to a non-technical customer? And that gives us a really good understanding of the person, because you're seeing them answer that in real time and seeing their expression. So it definitely drives whether they understand what they're talking about or not.
And how do you tailor that for junior roles?
For junior roles, it's less tell me exactly what the tool is. It's tell me what your thought process is. So for a junior analyst, I would go, tell me how you would analyze an alert. I don't care about the tool. What is your thought process? This occurred. Walk me through what you're going to check. And if their thought process is right, that's all I care about. If they go off, in left field, then maybe they're not the right fit and need to be brought back in. But it's all about understanding what you're doing, seeing those second and third order events.
In terms of culture, what do you look for when building your team, and how does your kind of company look at culture? Because I heard this philosophy being thrown around. If you hire for fit, you might build a monoculture, but the way I see it, there are forms of culture. So doesn't necessarily mean everyone needs to think the same way or believe 100% in all the same things, but perhaps you want to build culture around your company's core values. So I'm just curious about what your point of view on culture is and how you build for that.
So I am an absolute diversity advocate. I hate the echo chamber that comes with hiring people that are exactly the same. I don't want people to think the same. I don't want people to act the same, because that's going to lead us to holes. A great analysis for that is if I look at a problem one way and you look at a problem another way and a third person looks at it a third way, and we all come to the same conclusion, then that's probably the right answer. If we all look at it the same way, then we're going to miss this other thing way over here that none of us seen because we weren't looking for it. So we look for that when we're building our teams. Degrees are important. Sometimes they're contractual requirements. Other times that they're not. They're just nice to have. But I'm not one of the people that is beholden to, one, having a degree, or two, having a degree that's in cybersecurity. My absolute best analysis guy has a degree in marketing. Completely unrelated. I have somebody who has a degree in accounting. And during her interview, we asked, and she's like, accounting gives me exceptional attention to detail. And that directly translates over to being able to be a cybersecurity analyst, because it's all about the details. So look for those things that are outside the box. Just because I have a position that's open, that's a mid-level position, doesn't mean that I won't necessarily hire a 18, 20-year-old guy or girl who's fresh out of an associate's degree, if they show they have the right aptitude and they have the depth of experience. Just because they're 20, it doesn't matter. It's what's between the 6 inches between your ears matters most. And as far as cultures, as long as you can get along and be a member of the team and be a contributing member of the team, that's what I care about. Everything else is noise.
I love that you touched on hiring outside the scope of IT and info security. How did those folks come to you? Did they decide they wanted to get into info security and then they applied for the roles, or did you somehow get referred to them? Like, how did you get in touch with these non-traditional infosec folks?
In one case, it was a direct referral. Somebody I knew had worked with the person, knew that they had this interest and background in cybersecurity, but not the formal education for cybersecurity. And we interviewed him, and he was an absolute rock star. We hired him on the spot. He's done amazing work. Some other folks, it's really just recruiters finding them, sending them to us and going, look, this person has a passion for this. This is how they're doing, demonstrating that they understand this. And it could be they're doing capture the flags, or they're going through down a cert train of A+, Net+, Security+, so on and so forth. But it really comes down to that interview. Do you have the right mindset and understand how to do the job? And then do you fit personality-wise? If you have those things, I'm going to hire you.
And did this marketing person have any certification, any formal training in info security?
They had some formal training. They were prior military, but were not doing that at the time, and had a active Security Plus.
So we're hearing more and more success stories where people can get into cyber through a non-traditional path.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if you're willing to go into those entry-level roles and work your way up. It's absolutely doable to get into cybersecurity from a non-traditional path.
The last time we spoke, you talked about companies paying too little and therefore staff don't stick around. We hear a lot about job hopping. So could you, again, if you don't mind, sharing some of your playbooks in how you retain top talent and what advice you can give in general to the industry about keeping your talent and what you can do?
That's actually fairly simple. It's know what the market is, know what your competitors are paying, and understand that the skills that your folks have are valuable, and you're going to have to pay them an appropriate amount to keep them, or they are going to go with somebody. It also goes back into having that internal promotion chain. They have to be able to see that they're not going to be a tier 1 or a tier 2 forever, that there is internal mobility both horizontally and vertically. You might not stay as a SOC analyst. We might move you over to be a tier 2 engineer, but you're getting all that knowledge on the engineering side that you didn't have as an analyst. And then we'll promote you up to a tier 3, and making sure that those salaries are competitive with what the market has is what's going to keep folks staying there when you have the right culture and you have the right mobility.
If I'm speaking with candidates, can you touch on what is important to candidates other than compensation?
A lot of what I hear from candidates is they want opportunity to learn and opportunity to grow. And I cannot fault them for that at all. That's absolutely what companies should be doing if they want to keep and retain talent, is provide opportunity. Because ultimately, everyone's replaceable, but there's a cost to replacing you. It's going to take me a month to get a job open, rec open, recruit it, go through the whole hiring process, then another 3 weeks to a month to get somebody actually trained. That's unproductive time for me. So if I'm able to provide you the environment where you're appropriately compensated and I'm able to give you the opportunities that you want and grow you, then you're going to stay and I'm going to win. And that's return on my investment.
After getting the job, what advice would you give to employees in their first 30 to 90 days?
Absolutely stay engaged. The same amount of passion that you showed trying to get the job, keep that after you have it. Learn as much as you can. Ask questions. Be the person that is constantly trying to get, all the information you can to be the employee that you would want to have. Put your best effort into being proficient as fast as possible.
In terms of skills and mentality, what would you say are the traits for folks wanting to get into a SOC role, Security Operations Center?
Really, it's being flexible. SOC stuff is absolutely all unplanned. There is nothing that you're doing in a SOC that is going to ever be a planned security incident or a planned malware attack. Putting forth the effort to learn all that you can and then be flexible when bad things do happen is going to be critical to being successful. Those who are rigid and, kind of goes back to that, only want to do the 8 to 5 are not going to be the successful folks. The folks that are willing to put in, the time and effort are going to see their opportunities skyrocket.
So flexibility and kind of unpredictability. What else should you be comfortable with?
SOCs are not a 8 to 5 job. They're, typically a 24/7, 365, weekends, holidays, your birthday, your kid's birthday. So if you're not willing to put that in, that could be a detractor for you and make it hard to get a SOC job or hard to maintain the desire to be in a SOC position. Now, clearly, as you go up the tiers, those things become a little bit more normalized to what folks are more expecting. But that comes with that higher level positions have higher level privileges.
We hear a lot about security burnout, SOC fatigue especially is a popular one. What advice can you give to folks who may be in that kind of situation right now? And how does your SOC operate? How do you prevent SOC fatigue? Is there training? Is it a way that SOCs work? Is it bad management? How can one prevent it? Or is it just part of the nature of the job?
Part of it's part of the nature of the job. Other parts are absolutely controllable by your management. It's making sure that you have the appropriate number of people on shift. There's a difference between working an average of 6 tickets an hour versus, 30 tickets an hour. That's a different level of stress. It goes back to having your more senior folks, your tier 3s going in and, making sure that your alerts are tuned properly so you're not getting a bunch of false positives or non-actionables that drive extraneous work for no appreciable return on investment. Making sure that you have the folks that can do coverage and have the appropriate training so you don't have single points of failure. So folks can take vacation. They can take off for their anniversary to spend time with their spouse and not feel like the world is going to cave in because they're not at work. It really comes down to, managing people and managing your workload appropriately and making sure that you have the right resources with the right training in the right places.
For those interested in taking the security analyst path, is there a traditional career progression for folks who may be curious of where they can go with this role?
Yeah, your very traditional SOC path will be tier 1 SOC analyst, where you're doing the initial triage. Then you'll move up to a tier 2 where you're going to do a bit more in-depth data searching and correlation, going up to the tier 3s that are going to do your actual incident responses and do actual SIM alert creation and tuning, SOC managers that are going to oversee all that stuff. But there are other branches that you can go from there, where you can go from being a tier 2 analyst into the engineering role and start doing the back end development of the tool set, which can then in turn lead you to other security tool stack engineering, or transition into other security tool stack front end technician roles. So you're not super limited one way or the other. I've seen folks transition from being a SOC analyst 2 into doing governance, risk, and compliance, GRC stuff, because there is a lot of overlap between those skill sets. Because when you're dealing with SOC, you're looking at everything. When you move over to GRC, you're looking at everything, just from a different filter and different lens. So there's lots of ability to move within the cybersecurity field, with the SOC being a trunk in that.
Is there anything else you would like to add before we close out today's episode?
Again, thanks for having me. SOC is just one of those things that it's that necessary role that every organization has to have, but it's also a great starting point for somebody who really wants to build a cybersecurity career. And just put forth the effort, and the positions are there.
One last bit of advice for folks trying to break into security for the first time. Anything top of mind that you would like to share with them?
Network. Most jobs are not advertised. So knowing somebody who will put in a word for you is your absolute best way to get a job.
Okay. So if folks would like to get in touch with you or apply for those roles, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on Cybersecurity Heroes, and to the rest of you, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of Cybersecurity Heroes. Practical and experiential knowledge on a day in the life of security heroes. Catch our next episode by subscribing or following through your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, please leave a rating for the show. They really help a lot. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.